What is going on, beautiful people? It is Tuesday, July 19th. Yes, getting closer and closer to the start of training camp, getting closer and closer to my birthday coming up. I told you guys, I think it was last week, it might have been 2 weeks ago, that I had a family tragedy. I'll touch on that a little bit tonight. Jump into this AFC North division, give you my thoughts on what the outlook for this division will be in the upcoming season. We'll take a look at all four teams in that division's schedule and kind of sort through what I think is ultimately going to become of that division this year. Kind of hard to predict that division, though, because of Cleveland. They play such a huge part in the outcome of what could be a very competitive AFC North, and we just don't know. That Deshaun Watson situation is still lingering. I don't think he's going to be suspended for very long. However, that's still, up in the air. So kind of hard to really know exactly what we're going to get from Cleveland, whether he plays or not. But we'll talk about all of that and then some. Franchise tag deadline to get a deal done long-term wise with the players that were tagged back in March came and went, and no new developments. All the guys that were under the tag, all four players, remained under the tag, did not get long-term deals done. We'll speak on that a little bit later on in the show. So much to get to tonight. So without any further ado, let's not delay. Let's get straight to the proceedings. Tonight, you are dialed in to the 276th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 276th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Late night, Louie. Tonight, it's been a whirlwind for me the last few days, man. Really going all the way back to last week, Thursday. It's just been crazy. It's just been constantly on the go for me. Having gotten actually, I can't complain about sleep. The last 2 out of 3 days, I've actually gotten some quality sleep. So I'm starting to catch back up in that department. But I was definitely slacking in the sleep department for a little while there. So I told you guys I had a family tragedy. I think I told you that on the podcast. It might have been the Washington show about a week and a half ago or so. And I'll just share this. My cousin passed away. And it was sudden, it was tragic, it was unexpected. And, I always talk about, life and, treasure the things that you have. Don't take anybody or anything for granted. All of those things that I always talk about because, on this channel, it's not just about the NFL. It's also about life. I always try to impart a little bit of that on you as well. Sometimes I try not to get too deep on y'all too often. That's not why you're here, but life is precious, and you just have to make sure you're not taking any element of it for granted. So I just wanted to make sure I delivered that message. That was on my heart, and I tell you guys that all the time. That's not a new message that I'm delivering tonight, but, going through that situation and seeing him there, realizing, the significance of it, like the finality of it, like he's not coming back. It's tough. It really is. Anyway, I digress. So needless to say, that was a trip to Georgia. That was 8 hours going, 8 hours coming back. I literally got 2 hours of sleep, close to 3, and I didn't sleep for for the next 24 hours. So it was crazy. Got some sleep on Sunday and Saturday into Sunday, and then I kind of recycled that. Went through that again Monday. coming back, drove. We got up at midnight. I barely shut my eyes for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then back on the road, coming back home. Another 8-piece. Got home. You scooped the twins up, so now it was good to not have the twins. Love them to death, but it was so nice to have 2 days without them. You pick them back up, and you just jump back into dad mode again. Big time. And they don't give a shit about what kind of sleep you have or haven't had. You just got to jump back in. So, needless to say, I'm getting back into the swing of things, but I'm not 100% there yet. But I'm getting there. I'm getting back into the swing of things. So, anyway, tonight we're going to jump into a number of topics. We're going to start the show tonight, though, the gym dropping session on the AFC North. Told you, to the victors go the spoils. They were the representatives for the AFC in the Super Bowl, were the Cincinnati Bengals. So we will start with them in the rest of their respective division, go through their schedule with a fine-tooth comb. I'll give you the pockets of the schedule, and particularly one part of the schedule that I think is going to be vital, crucial to that team's success, that I'll be eyeballing in the upcoming season, that I think will ultimately help determine whether that team makes it to the postseason or not. But without any further ado, enough talking. Let's get to some action, shall we? Let's jump into the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule and the gym dropping session, or Pittsburgh Steelers, the AFC North schedules and the gym dropping session. Let me drop this gym on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So let's jump into these schedules. So we're going to start with the Cincinnati Bengals. They were the winners of the AFC North. I think I can speak for most out there. I don't like speaking for you very often, but I think I can speak for most of you out there when I say we didn't see them doing what they did. Maybe, having that uprising and jumping up and biting some of the teams in their division and, making a little bit of noise, but no one saw their run to the Super Bowl coming. I can say that, I think, very confidently, that I wasn't alone in that assessment. I knew they were going to beat the Vegas Raiders. I had no idea that, and I knew they were going to beat Tennessee. Okay, I predicted that as well. I had no idea they were going to beat Kansas City and make it to the Super Bowl. So now, what I want to see, what I am very fascinated with this Cincinnati Bengals team is, can they tune out the noise? Because they're going to be getting patted on the back. There are going to be a lot of people hyping them up, and rightfully so. This is a really talented football team, especially on the offensive side of the football. What they did to that defense and how they revamped it last offseason, it was huge. It was a huge part of the reason why they ultimately made it to the Super Bowl. That said, now there's a lot of success and more so expectations on this Bengals team. It's so easy when you're the hunter, when no one's expecting you to do anything. It's so easy to just kind of go under the radar and go about your business, human-like, without any attention being paid to you. You can go out and move however you want and make, noise, and it still doesn't really resonate. That's what Cincinnati did last year. Now all eyes are on the Bengals. They're the Don Dada in the AFC North. They're the team that represented the AFC in the Super Bowl. All the expectations lie with the Cincinnati Bengals, and everyone is expecting them to follow up what they did last season with a similar type of campaign. Are they capable of not allowing the success of last year to go to their heads? We see this with a lot of young teams in the NFL, where the success of a season, especially one that comes out of nowhere, like it did for Cincinnati, it goes to their head. They think they've arrived, and all of a sudden they expect to show up, teams to lay down, and for them to walk out victorious. Or are they going to put in the work? Are they going to come with a business-like approach week in, week out, understand that they are no longer the hunter, but now the hunted? They're at the mountaintop. Teams are chasing after them in the AFC. Are they going to approach each and every single contest with the demeanor and the swag of a team that made it to the Super Bowl, that expects to win, but doesn't expect the opponent to lay down and allow them to win, but rather having to go and take that victory like they did so often a season ago. That's what I'm interested to see with Cincinnati. Only time will tell, but they've got all the pieces necessary to get back to the postseason and, maybe even back to the Super Bowl in a loaded AFC. Let's look at their schedule, and I'll quickly go through it, and then I'll give you the pocket of the schedule that is fascinating to me that I'll be watching. So week 1, home for Pittsburgh. Week 2 at Dallas. Week 3 at the Jets. Week 4, home for Miami on a Thursday night. Week 5, back-to-back weeks on primetime television. You're at Baltimore on a Sunday night. At New Orleans, week 6. Home for the Falcons, week 7. At Cleveland in week 8 on a Monday night. Home for Carolina in week 9. Then you get a week 10 bye week for the Cincinnati Bengals. Week 11 at Pittsburgh off the bye on a Sunday night. Week 12 at Tennessee. Week 13, AFC Championship game rematch, Chiefs at the crib. They played the Chiefs twice last year, if you remember. They also came back and beat the Chiefs in the regular season at home, did the same thing in the postseason. That time it was on the road at Arrowhead. So that will be a fascinating matchup in week 13. Week 14, home for Cleveland. Week 15 at Tampa. Week 16 at New England, excuse me. Week 17, home for Buffalo on a Monday night. And week 18, home for Baltimore to wrap up the season. So a regular season, that is. So the first thing that stuck out to me, this is not the stretch of schedule that, I'm highlighting, but the first thing that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, obviously the Bengals make it all the way to Super Bowl. They've got an exciting and fun offense. They're must-see TV, and so they've got 5 primetime games. That's not what attracted my attention. What attracted my attention is that of the 5 primetimers that they have, 3 of which are all against divisional opponents on the road. So all 3 of their games against divisional opponents on primetime television are all on the road. That is tough sledding. They're at Baltimore on a Sunday night, at Cleveland on a Monday night, at Pittsburgh on a Sunday night. The schedule makers did them no favors when it comes to playing against teams within the division on primetime television. The stakes are a lot higher when it's a divisional opponent. To make matters worse, it's on the road, and then you add the juice of an environment that is charged up on primetime television at night under the lights. That's tough for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that portion of their schedule with all of those primetime games against teams within the division on primetime television. But this is the part of the schedule for Cincinnati that, for me, it jumps off the screen. So the latter portion of the schedule is interesting because I think the first half of the schedule is very doable. They play the NFC South. So I think with teams like Carolina and Atlanta, and then they have the Jets also on the schedule, I think there are some very, very winnable games. They play the AFC East as well. Who knows what the Dolphins are going to be with a first-year head coach, and they added Tyreek Hill and all of the weapons that they have offensively. We'll see what the Miami Dolphins are, but I think the Patriots are going to take a step back this year with no more Mike or Josh Daniels at offensive coordinator. I think they're going to take a step back offensively. I think the Miami Dolphins are an enigma. We really don't know what they're going to be. And then I still think the Jets, they could be a surprise team this year. They could stink. We don't really know. So I think the first half of this schedule is loaded with games that will give them an opportunity, should they fall off the wagon, to get back up, dust themselves off, and get back on track. The second half of the schedule, however, is not as forgiving. And so after that bye week, I want you to kind of turn your attention to weeks 11 through 18, the back end of the schedule after the bye week, the final 8 weeks of the season, weeks 11 through 18. That is as brutal as it gets, honestly. It's a tough stretch of football. The good thing is it's 4 home, 4 away, so it's not this egregious split where it's 5 on the road, 3 at home or anything like that. But coming off the bye, you're at Pittsburgh on a Sunday night. I don't think the Steelers are going to be great this year. Obviously, they're going to be either trotting out a rookie quarterback or playing Mitchell Trubisky. Either way, you'd like to think that they're going to miss Ben Roethlisberger at the quarterback position, even though Ben was compromised at that stage of his career. He was still Ben Roethlisberger. So you'd like to think that their offense is going to struggle, but we'll see. I don't want to make any assumptions, but that's what we do this time of the year. We make assumptions. So that's going to be a tough game because of the defense that Pittsburgh plays. It's a divisional opponent. It's family business. It's on the road. It's on primetime television. And then after that, you get another playoff team in the Tennessee Titans. I don't think Tennessee is going to be all that great this year, but again, we don't know. We'll see. It's on the road. It's going to be tough. You would like to think. Then you come back home for Kansas City. We already know what kind of a ball game that's going to be. Then you face Cleveland at home. Again, if Deshaun Watson gets suspended, he'll be back by the time you get to that Week 14 matchup, no matter how long his suspension is. He's not going to be suspended for the entire year. You can rule that out. So if it's a 4 or 6 game suspension, he'll be back. If it's an 8, which I don't see it being any more than 6, I think it's really more likely than not going to be 4, but he'll be back by Week 14. In what kind of condition, how well are the Browns playing by then? I don't know, but it's still family business no matter who's at quarterback. Then you're at Tampa and then at New England. I mean, those are tough games, especially the road games. Home for Buffalo on a Sunday night. Are you kidding me? And then you finish up home against Baltimore. And I think that may have some playoff division type implications in Week 18. At least it's at the crib. So I think that last stretch of games is tough. If you're Cincinnati, you really need to put money in the bank the first half of the season, because who knows how the back end is going to go. And like I said, you're playing a ton of teams that played in the postseason last year, back into the schedule. And the teams that aren't playoff teams from a year ago, they have playoff aspirations this year, such as Cleveland and Baltimore. So I'm looking at that back end of the schedule, and I'm saying, if you're Cincinnati, you can't afford to lose to Atlanta and the Jets. And we know this Cincinnati Bengals team, for as good as they are against the upper echelon, they can play down to the level of their opponent. We've seen them lose games at the Jets in the past and struggle with teams that they have no business struggling with. So we know they are capable of playing down to the level of competition. They can't afford to slip up against Atlanta or Carolina or the Jets the first half of the season. They've got to take care of business against teams like that, because the back end of the schedule is not a game. So they'll have to take care of business. I've got Cincinnati at 12-5, however. I think they find a way to maneuver this schedule. I think they don't allow the success of last year to go to their head. I think they come in prepared, take care of business, beat the teams they're supposed to beat some of the teams that we're not sure they're supposed to beat, and find themselves right around the top of the AFC North once again. We'll see. I could easily see them being 10-7, and not as good as they probably should be. But at the end of the day, I think this is a team that is ready, as long as Joe Burrow is healthy. And I think they're poised to get back to the postseason, play a home game, and then go from there, just like they did a season ago. So we then go from the Cincinnati Bengals to the team that finished second in this division a season ago, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also made the postseason. A lot of people forget that the Steelers made the playoffs last year. It was such a quick in and out, right? They were just visiting. They were just stopping by, passing through. They got a tank full of gas, and they headed on out on the road. They weren't there very long. So I don't think they're going to make it back to the postseason this year, but one thing I've learned over the years is never, ever bet against Mike Tomlin. So man's never finished below 500 in his career. And I don't know. I don't know if this is the year that streak is broken, but all good things must come to an end. Let's run through the schedule real quick, and I'll give you the pocket of the schedule that I think is one worth watching. So Week 1 at Cincinnati, Week 2 home for New England, Week 3 at Cleveland on a Thursday night, Week 4 home for the Jets, Week 5 at Buffalo, Week 6 home for Tampa Bay, Week 7 at Miami on a Sunday night, Week 8 at Philadelphia before heading into your bye week. And come out of the bye, home for New Orleans, home for Cincinnati on a Sunday night, at Indianapolis the following week on a Monday night. So back-to-back weeks on primetime television for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know as long as the Steelers are relevant, they're going to have 5 primetime games. They're one of the needle-moving franchises in the NFL. Their fan base travels no matter where the game is played. So they're going to get 5 of those puppies if they're any good, or they were good the previous year, which the Steelers, as I mentioned, were a playoff team were. So they got their 5 primetime matchups. At Atlanta in week 13, home for Baltimore week 14, at Carolina week 15, home for the Vegas Raiders on a Saturday night in week 16, at Baltimore in week 17, and they finish up the season at home versus the Cleveland Browns in week 18. So going back to the schedule, I think it's right out of the gate. We're going to find out what the Pittsburgh Steelers are made of in 2022. Unlike Cincinnati, where there's some games in there, Cincinnati starts off tough with Dallas and with Pitt in week 1 at home and then at Dallas. But after that, they get a couple of opportunities, throughout the first, 8-9 weeks of the season to take a breath. That's not necessarily the case for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This first 8 games of the season, it's tough. I mean, it really is. They've got one game in here against a team that shouldn't really register. But then again, it's a new season, and the Jets made a lot of moves. Jets had a very good draft. We perceive them to have had a really good draft. I think they had a really good draft. And then their offseason was actually pretty solid. Who knows what the Jets are going to be? Who knows what Zach Wilson is in year 2? So you don't even want to count that Jets game as a layup. But to me, the first 8 weeks of the season prior to the bye that's in week 9, that's what we're going to find out what the Pittsburgh Steelers are made of. This, to me, isn't the year that you want to start 2-6, 3-5, and then have to dig yourself up out of the hole. Now, the schedule on the back end for Pittsburgh will allow them to have an opportunity to dig themselves out of a hole, but it's got to be a minor one. It's got to be starting the season off 3-5. Can't be starting off the season 2-6 or anything of the sort and thinking you're going to somehow turn it around, win 7 out of your final 8, and find yourself in playoff contention. The schedule does allow that. You got Atlanta, Carolina, and those teams that I talked about on the back end of this schedule, but it's you really have to take care of business at the beginning of the season. And to me, at Cincinnati week 1, that's followed by home for New England. Okay, so 2 tough games against playoff teams from a season ago. Then you get at Cleveland on a Thursday night. Again, is that a Deshaun Watson-led Cleveland Browns, or is that Jacoby Brissett leading the Cleveland Browns? That makes a huge difference. We'll see. But either way, it's still on the road at Cleveland on a Thursday night. So that's going to be tough. Then you get the Jets at home. Okay, that's a winnable football game. You feel good about that. We'll see what the Jets are in 2022. I don't know if they're going to be a pushover or not. I love what they did this offseason. Who knows? We'll see. However, after that, at Buffalo, okay, you went to Buffalo last year, week 1, and won a game that you had no business winning. So, hey, look, it's possible, right? It's doable, but that's tough at Buffalo, right? Then the following week, home for Tampa. Again, that's a really tough matchup for you, okay? Especially when their defense is playing well against whomever's at quarterback for you, whether it's a rookie, or it's Mitchell Trubisky. That's a tough matchup. At Miami on a Sunday night, that's tough. I've talked about Miami. We don't know. They're an enigma. We don't know what their first-year head coach, Mike Daniel, is going to look like. We don't know what to expect from that offense. The defense is usually what they hang their hats on, but this is a whole new staff. So who's to say if the defense is going to be good like it was under the last regime? So when Brian Flores was there, that defense was always good, even when the offense was somewhat stagnant. So we'll see. That's a tough game, though, on the road. Again, charged up crowd, under the lights, Sunday night at Miami. And then at Philadelphia, another playoff team from a season ago. So that's a tough stretch, first 8 weeks. And then to make matters worse, of those 8 games, 5 of them are on the road. 5 of them are on the road, including 2 primetime games, both on the road. So the Steelers are going to have to navigate that first 8 games prior to the bye. They'll have an opportunity after the bye week, home for New Orleans, at Atlanta, at Carolina. Those are all games you feel like you have a good chance of winning. Home for Cincinnati. You finally get some home games within the division because you were at Cincinnati, you were at Cleveland in the first 8 weeks of the season. So you get some home cooking within the division. So you'll have an opportunity to bounce back if you can find a way to navigate the first 8 games of the season. But it's going to be tough. Not especially with either Mitchell Trubisky or a rookie at quarterback and Kenny Pickett. It's going to be tough. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at 9-8 this year. I just can't see them winning more than 9 games this season with their quarterback situation being what it is. The defense we know is always up to par. And if the defense is as good as it was last year, if they get anything out of the quarterback position, they'll be right in the mix. 9-8 with a chance, down the stretch to maybe win double-digit games and make the sneak into the postseason like they did last year with that tie. But I think it's going to be tough this year. We'll see. So let's transition from Pittsburgh to the team that finished third in the division, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens don't miss the postseason very often under John Harbaugh, but obviously Lamar Jackson's health last year was a big issue, and it cost them. Even though I thought they fought their asses off with Tyler Huntley at quarterback, and he gave them a chance in a bunch of games, and John Harbaugh rolled the dice a couple of games, going for 2 at the end of ball games and trying to go for the win instead of the tie and things of that nature. But if they had Lamar Jackson, you'd like to think that they would have won 2 or 3 of those games. And that's the difference between them missing the postseason and being at home when the postseason got kicked off. But they're going to bounce back. As long as Lamar Jackson is healthy, he's playing for a contract. He's probably going to ball out this year. I think this is a Baltimore Ravens team that could be dangerous this year and one to watch, definitely. So with that said, let's run through the schedule real quick, and then we'll come back and look at that stretch of football that I think is going to be pivotal for them. At the Jets, week 1, home for the Dolphins, week 2, at New England, week 3, home for Buffalo, week 4, home for Cincinnati on a Sunday night in week number 5, at the Giants in week 6, home for Cleveland in week 7, at Tampa Bay on a Thursday night in week 8, and then at New Orleans on a Monday night. So back-to-back prime timers for the Ravens heading into their byes. They take on the New Orleans Saints on a Monday night prior to the bye. So they come out of the bye, and one of those little scheduling quirks, they get 3 straight home games out of the bye, do the Baltimore Ravens. Home for Carolina, home for Jacksonville, home for Denver. So you look at those first 2 and you're thinking, hey, they got to clean those 2 teams up. And then you'd like to get Denver on the back end of that thing and go 3-0 in that stretch at the crib. We'll see what they do there. That's going to be a nice little, barometer for them as to where they are in the season. Those 3 home games in a row. You come out of that week 14 at Pittsburgh, week 15 at Cleveland, home for Atlanta in week 16, home for Pittsburgh in week 17 before finishing up the regular season week 18 at Cincinnati. So let's go back and take a look at where I think this pocket of the schedule is for the Ravens that is going to be really vital to the success of their season. And it's right before the bye. It's weeks 3 through 9 for the Ravens. So it's a 7-game stretch, weeks 3 through 9. So the first 2 games of the season at the Jets and home for Miami, winnable football games. Don't really know. We've talked about those 2 teams already, in talking about Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and those teams being on the schedule. We don't know what the Jets or the Dolphins are going to be. The AFC East is going to be interesting this year. But that said, those are games, if you're Baltimore, you feel like you should be able to handle. After that, however, the next, 7 games, weeks 3 through 9, they're pretty tough. Okay. And so at New England, that's tough. Any way you slice it. I don't think the Patriots offense is going to be that good, but their defense is going to be good because that's what Bill Belichick hangs his hat on. So that's going to be a tough game. And for whatever reason, the Patriots know how to play the Ravens. They just do. So home for Buffalo. Home away, Buffalo's tough. Period. End of discussion. Home for Cincinnati on a Sunday night. That's, again, the Bengals came to your house, smacked you around, and really made you look like they made you look like a bitch. I didn't want to call the Ravens a B word because the Ravens, that's not who they are, but they slapped you. They bitch slapped you in your crib last year. It was embarrassing. And so that's tough, period. End of discussion. Whether you got Lamar or you don't got Lamar, Cincinnati doesn't seem to care about your home field advantage. At Cincinnati, at the Giants, that's the one layup that you think you're going to have. And again, you don't know what the Giants are going to be, but that's the one layup you think you have in that stretch. Then you're at home for Cleveland. But again, if that's Deshaun Watson playing, and even if he serves a 6-game suspension, that'll be the first game off the suspension, week 7. So either way, I think you're getting Deshaun Watson in that week 7 matchup. That's going to be tough. At Tampa on a Thursday night, so quick turnaround. You get Brady and company on the road. Yikes. And then you get a elongated rest, so you get this pseudo bye week, and then you add an extra day on top of it because this is a Monday night contest, but it's still on the road at New Orleans. One of those teams that if you're going to play them on the road, you much rather do it in obscurity at 1 o'clock or at 4:25. You really don't want to play New Orleans on primetime television, at night. The crowd is just raucous. They get juiced up. It just makes it such a tough environment to go and win a football game at, especially if they're playing well. If Jameis Winston is playing well and they have, everything kind of clicking for them, that's a tough environment to go and get a win on a Monday night. So I think that's a really tough stretch of football for the Ravens. At New England, home for Buffalo, home for Cincinnati on a Sunday night. At the Giants, home for Cleveland. At Tampa on a Thursday night, quick turnaround. And then the following week at New Orleans on a Monday night before heading into your bye week. I think that's one of those stretches. You just got to find a way to navigate and come out of that thing with your head above water at 4-3. And then if you tack on 1 or 2 wins from the first 2 weeks, you're at 5-3, maybe 6-4. What is it? What is it? 5-4 or 6-3, depending on what you do in the first 2 weeks. But I think you got to go 4-3 in that 7-game stretch. You tack on 1 victory there, and you're 5-4. You tack on 2, and you're 6-3, and you're sitting pretty. And then you come out of your bye week with 3 straight home games, 2 of which against teams that were bottom feeder teams a season ago in Carolina and Jacksonville. And you say, hey, we got to take care of business. So I think the schedule is set up for you to have a strong second half with teams like Jacksonville, Carolina, and Atlanta on the schedule if you can take care of business in that 7-game stretch prior to the bye week. I've got Baltimore getting their act back together, going 11-6, challenging Cincinnati for the division, and having that final game of the season before the division crown, and we'll see what happens in that contest. I've got both of those teams at 11-5 heading into that final game. It's at Cincinnati. We'll see if the Ravens can go and steal one in Cincinnati. So that's the Ravens schedule for the upcoming season. And then we finish up with the Browns. And so this Browns team is as fascinating a situation as I've encountered going into a season in a while, because here we are literally a week away from most teams having their veterans report to camp, and we still don't have a verdict, which tells me the NFL is trying to find a way to suspend this guy, and they really don't have, I think, the guns or weaponry necessary to do what it is they ultimately want to do here. So here we are a week, from training camp, and we still don't have an answer as to what the punishment for Deshaun Watson is going to be. Obviously, that's going to determine how this season goes for Cleveland, because even if it's not the entire season, and it's not going to be, if it's 6 games, that's a significant enough of a stretch that they could not rebound from him missing the first 6 weeks of the season. Even if it's 4 games, you got to keep in mind, this guy didn't play a single snap a season ago. So despite preseason ball and camp and all of that stuff, he's still going to be rusty. Playing in a live NFL game where they're actually counting wins and losses, and they actually have an impact on the overall outcome of your season, regular, preseason games where you can control your team And what you put out on the field, well, you can't control what the other team is doing. They don't have to put any of their starters out there. They don't have to blitz. They can give you vanilla looks, and that's not really getting Deshaun Watson prepared for what's to come. So if he misses 4 games and then comes back in week 5, you got the Chargers in week 5. That's not a great game to come back in and expect him to just hit the ground running. So this Cleveland Browns schedule is just hard to really predict because of the unpredictability of the Deshaun Watson situation and just the fact that there's no clarity right now. But I'll attempt, right? Let's go through the schedule real quick. At Carolina week 1, home for the Jets week 2, home for the Steelers week 3 on a Thursday night. At Atlanta week 4, home for the Chargers week 5, home for the New England Patriots week 6, at Baltimore week 7, home for Cincinnati on a Monday night week 8. Then they hit their bye week in week number 9. So real quick sidebar. The NFL set this division up on a bye schedule, meaning 2 teams have a week 9 bye, 2 teams have a week 10 bye. So every team in this division is going to have their bye week in either weeks 9 or 10. So that's one of those scheduling quirks, because a lot of times you'll see one team with a 5, another team with a 9, somebody with a week 11, and another team with a week 14. Like, there's no synchronicity to it. Or 2 teams are on a week 7, and then you got one team with an 11 and another with a 14. Well, everyone in this division will be done with their bye week by week 10, 2-9, 2-10. So the Browns are a week 9 bye, along with Pittsburgh. So at Miami off the bye in week 10, at Buffalo in week number 11, home for Tampa in week 12, at Houston in week 13, at Cincinnati week 14, home for Baltimore week 15, home for New Orleans week 16, at Washington week 17, at Pittsburgh week 18. So here's the skinny on Cleveland. For me, the pocket of the schedule that is essential if they're going to have any success is weeks 5 through 14. So that's a long stretch, right? But here's why it's so important. And there's a bye week in there that makes it a little bit longer than it needs to be. But I think Watson gets suspended for the first 4 weeks. That's my guess. That's my prediction. I'm sticking to it. 4 games suspension for Deshaun Watson. League's going to find a way to say that he, broke some kind of conduct with the code that they have. And so they're going to get him for 4 games. They would love to get him for more, but they can't. So they'll make something stick similar to Tom Brady and Deflategate, even though their power is a lot less than it was then because of this new CBA. But still, I think they're going to find a way to get him and pop him for 4. So to me, Jacoby Brissett, he's a good enough veteran backup to step in and navigate. And the NFL did them a huge favor by giving them Carolina and the Jets to open the first 2 weeks, and then Atlanta in week 4. So they could easily find a way to win 3 out of their first 4, whether Deshaun Watson plays or not. So they've got a chance to get off to, at no worse, a 2-2 start without Watson, and then get him back in week 5. And this is where I think the real season begins for the Cleveland Browns, is week 5. And home for the Chargers, home for the Chargers. That's tough. Home for the Patriots the following week. Again, yeah, they're home games, but they are tough. Yeah. You look at the Chargers, you think that's a team that's probably looking to head to the postseason this year. Easily could have made it last year had their coach decided to just let bygones be bygones. The Patriots were a postseason team a season ago. The Ravens on the road after that. Obviously, I think they're going to bounce back this year. That's going to be a toughie. Home for Cincinnati on a Monday night. Whether Deshaun Watson plays or not, you have a battle of Ohio. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. Then you get the bye week. You come off the bye, and you've got a couple of roadies against AFC East opponents at Miami and then at Buffalo. Ouch, right? Then you're home for Tampa. Yikes. Okay. And then it finally eases up just a bit, just a tad at Houston, but then after that, you're at Cincinnati. So to me, even if Deshaun Watson is playing, they could very well be underdogs in a number of these games, and they could lose a number of these games. His first game back, let's say that his first game back is week 5, home for the Chargers. I don't think they're winning that football game. The following week, you're getting Bill Belichick, scheming up a defense to make you uncomfortable in your second game in almost 2 years of, calendar, 2 days, 2 games, your second game in, almost a full calendar year and a half. Like, Bill Belichick's going to be trying to scheme up blitzes and coverages and looks that are going to try to really confuse Deshaun Watson and make him uncomfortable. Then after that, you're at Baltimore. Again, that's not ideal, right? Your first 3 games back against Chargers, Patriots, and Ravens. And then Cincinnati, a team that made it all the way to the Super Bowl, a little bit of family business there. Even though it's at home and it's on Monday night, it's still brutal. So those first 4 games back prior to the bye, if that's, in fact, his first 4 games back, yikes, ouch, zoinks. Then you come off the bye and they send you on the road. A couple of teams in the AFC East in Miami and Buffalo. Good luck with that. After you come back home, you say, woof, we're back off that road trip, and Tampa Bay's waiting for you at the crib, and then Houston at the on the road, and then Cincinnati on the road. So that whether Deshaun plays or not, that's a tough stretch of football. One that I don't think the Browns are going to navigate successfully. Whether Deshaun Watson plays, I just think it's too many distractions this year. I think this season is a wash for the Browns, to be honest with you. With all the things that they've gone through this offseason with Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson, all the things that they're going to go through with Deshaun Watson heading into the season, and all the things they're going to go through with Deshaun Watson during the season, because they're going to be protests and all these different distractions every single week, every single stadium. There's going to be distractions. I just don't know if this team is able to rally around Deshaun Watson and have those distractions, galvanize them, and make them a stronger force. I think it's actually going to work in the opposite direction. Initially, they're going to have to figure out who the leaders on that team are and get all of that stuff out of their system. I think this is the year they do that. I think they struggled this year with all of the, distractions. And I think next year they're a better team because of all the distractions. I think they're a much mentally tougher team next year, but I think it affects them this year. I've got the Cleveland Browns at 8-9 this season. Whether Deshaun Watson is suspended for a significant amount of time or not, I think they're going to struggle because of all that they've gone through with Baker and Deshaun Watson, and all that they're going to go through this season with Deshaun Watson as well. So that is my rundown of the AFC North, and that's how I think this division is going to play itself out. What says you out there as we transition into social media maneuvers? I'm a Midnight Marauder. Y'all know what it is. I appreciate you guys chopping it up with the kid tonight. If you have any comments out there that you want to be read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent. But if you want to jump to the front of the line, super chats are the way to do that. I can't guarantee you that I'm going to get to your comment just using the hashtag. If you want to guarantee that your comment gets read, super chats are the way to do it. So with that said, let's get to your comments. We have a few super chats, so I will get to those first, and then we will get to any hashtags that are out there. Eric DeBose, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Eric. Thank you so much for the super chat. Writes, just sending some love, Lou. Appreciate you, bro. Blessings to you and your family. He says, let's effing go HTTC. I appreciate you, Eric. Thank you so much for the love and the super. And I again appreciate the love offering from my guy, Eric DeBose. We got another super chat here. This is from John Graves the third. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy JG3 writes, condolences to your family, Lou. I appreciate that, man. I got closure. I feel so much better now than I did, the last couple of weeks. So I got closure. Obviously, it's a tough situation, but that's what we do as humans. We persevere and we move on. So his spirit, his legacy will continue to remain ever strong and bright. And I'll make sure that I do my part to uplift his spirit and his legacy and keep his name, in the universe. But I was able to gain closure, and that's the most important part about situations like that. So thank you for the super chat, JG3. Jeremiah Butler, my condolences, my man. It's always tough, especially when it hits tragedy strikes and hits that close to home. I lost a cousin, and so that wasn't an immediate family member. To lose a family member that close to home, that's as tough as it gets, man. So my condolences to you, and hopefully you're a lot further along in your grieving process, and you're able to hold on to the good times and the memories that bring you joy. And so thank you for the well wishes, and as I said before, I hope that you are in a greater space in your life now after that tragedy. My guy JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy John Perez writes, heard about Bates not wanting to play on the tag. I don't think Cincinnati would let him go, but if they did, he's not going to want to come cheap in a trade. So we're going to talk about those players a little bit later on, but I mean, we could talk about it now. You super chatted. John Bates the third is a really interesting dynamic there in Cincinnati. I've talked about this in the inner workings of an NFL locker room and how fragile that can be when you look up as a player that was drafted by an organization. You've done everything the right way. You've been really good for them. And, he's had his moments where he hasn't been at his absolute best, but there's been more good than bad with with Jesse Bates the third in Cincinnati. And when you look around and you see the money that they've wasted over the years, whether it's on an offensive lineman that didn't pan out, or it's Trey Waynes that they wasted money on in Cincinnati, and you say, so you're going out, you're paying all of these guys X amount of dollars, and it's my turn to get paid. I'm a veteran in this locker room. I'm a guy that's done it the right way, and it's my turn, and I can't get mine. Are you serious right now? Is that what we're really doing? And that's a bitter pill to swallow. And if you're Cincinnati, you got to be careful with that shit, man. I mean, too often it seems like in Cincinnati in particular, guys are allowed to walk away, and you can't re-sign everybody. I get it. If we were going back in time a bit, whether it's check, 1-2, 1-2, guess who? Mohamed Sanu, or it's what's the dang on receiver that went to Detroit in free agency? Ah, man. Now he's with Jacksonville. Marvin Jones, right? It's Marvin Jones, or, as recent as William Jackson III. And now Jesse Bates, like, they've hung on to a lot of, I don't want to make it seem like all of they're Jacksonville, where all of their top stars end up leaving, whether it's via trade or free agency. I don't want to make them seem like they're Jacksonville, because it's not. They've held on to guys, whether it was Carlos Dunlap, they held on to him for a while. They held on to Geno Atkins for a long time. They held on to AJ Green for a very long time. I don't want to make it seem like, Andrew Whitworth is a guy they held on for a very long time until he ended up going to Los Angeles with the Rams. So I don't want to make it seem like they weren't holding on to their own, but it does seem like an organization that doesn't mind allowing guys to leave, but yet you're paying guys to come in here. It's tough. It's tough when you look around and you're seeing other guys get, and they just, signed Joe Mixon back, not 2 off seasons ago, maybe. So they're paying some of their own. They held on to Tyler Boyd as well. They paid him. So again, I don't want to make it seem like they're not paying their own in Cincinnati, because they have, but they also haven't paid some of the guys that probably should have been paid in Cincinnati. And when you're bringing in guys like Trey Hendrickson, he was a beast for them. No one's doubting that was a good move by Cincinnati. Same can be said for Mike Hilton and all the other guys, Chidobe Awuzie, that they brought in last year and spent good money on. It just sucks as a player that you feel like, I'm a part of the nucleus of this football team. I've done everything you've asked me to, and then some. Where's mine? Where's my slice of the pie? And he feels slighted. And I remember last year, he felt slighted by the Cincinnati Bengals. He felt like he should have gotten his deal last year. And I could see this one coming. I saw the writing on the wall, and I said, if they franchise tag him and they don't get a long-term deal done, this could get ugly. And he hasn't signed his he hasn't signed his franchise tag yet, which means he doesn't have to report to camp. I surmise, because even though he has the leverage because he hasn't signed his name on the dotted line on that franchise tag, he's not going to miss a year of football. It doesn't do him any good. It doesn't put him in a position to better his situation. He probably just doesn't want to be at training camp now, and doesn't have to play in the preseason. And I'm pretty sure he'll sign before the start of the regular season so that his franchise tag is guaranteed and he can get his bread. But he just want to put himself at risk, in the preseason or in training camp. And now he doesn't have to. So ultimately, he's gonna report. Ultimately, he's gonna sign. I just think it's gonna be a little while before that takes place. But that's not an ideal situation for a team. And I just talked about that. You don't need any more distractions. You're now the hunted instead of the hunter. You don't need any distractions. This is a distraction for Cincinnati. We'll see how they navigate it. But I think this is his last year in Cincinnati, to be honest with you. So we'll see what happens. And to your point, if Cincinnati decides, and they've always been a stubborn franchise. Remember, this is the same franchise that refused to trade Carson Palmer, and instead of trading him, made him sit out a year. Refused to trade Chad Johnson at that time. Washington offered them 2 first-round picks. I mean, that's a no-brainer deal. For a wide receiver, are you stupid or are you just dumb? Like, unbelievable that they would not trade him for 2 first-round picks. Washington was stupid for even offering that, but that's the state of the franchise at the time. That was the state of the franchise. They didn't know if they were coming or going, and they turned that down. So this is an organization that can be bullheaded, stubborn, and they're not going to be forced into anything. That's not the Mike Brown way. You're not going to force Mike Brown to do anything he doesn't want to do. So I don't see Jesse Bates being traded. They're going to force him to sign that franchise tag. He's going to play under that franchise tag. And then I think next year he'll get to test free agency. That's what I think ultimately happens. But we'll see. And if, to your point, if you trade for him, he's going to want a new deal. You're not trading for him, and he's not going to play on the franchise tag. You have to trade him and give him a new deal. So anybody that trades for him understands that. But again, I don't see Cincinnati trading him. Red Wing 01, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Red Wing 01, writes, hey, Lou, can't catch the stream tonight, but wanted to send some love. I appreciate that. Truly do appreciate that, Red Wing 01. And my condolences. Thank you so much for the well wishes and the condolences. I appreciate that, Red Wing 01. He writes, also briefly wanted to touch on the USFL cornerbacks. We signed DeJuan Neal, is a practice squad guy at best, but keep an eye on Channing Stribling. I've heard that name before. It'll be interesting. I told you the depth at corner is one to watch. It is a very, very touch and go type of position for me. The one, everyone wants to harp on linebacker. I keep talking about, and there's a reason I keep talking about the secondary, but the cornerback position in particular, there's not a ton of depth that you feel confident in. I can tell you that. I feel like at the cornerback position right now, we probably go 4 deep because, again, I'm a lot higher on Danny Johnson than most. But after Danny Johnson, I don't know if Corn Elder, if he, makes you feel good and warm and fuzzy inside, great. Knock your socks off. I don't feel great about Corn Elder. We drafted the cornerback in the 7th round. I want to be excited about him, but he's a 7th round corner. So I'm like, we'll see. Christian Holmes, I don't really know. And so you bring in a couple of guys from the USFL. I mean, all you can do is kick the tires, see what happens. It's the same thing we did in, the preseason last year and in training camp last year. And we ended up finding a diamond in the rough last year. So we'll see if we can, have lightning strike for us twice and find a gem in training camp and into the preseason and say, hey, this guy deserves a roster spot. But right now, to me, cornerback is one of those positions to keep an eye on. The depth is not all that great after the fourth corner on the football team. So we'll see what happens. But we'll definitely be keeping an eye on those guys, especially Channing Stribling. Thank you for the super chat. Red Wings 01. Joe Castles. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Joe writes, we got the division, bro. SA, Texas, holding strong for our Commanders. You know what it is, as I've said before, make sure you're keeping cool, hydrating yourself properly. I assume that it's still hot as balls in San Antonio, Texas. And as always, continue to hold us down in the land of Cowboys fans. Continue to hold us down strong as a member of this Commanders fan base. Let's see. Got a super chat here from Condo P. My girl, Condoleezza Perry. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My girl, Condo P. writes, we need part 2 of the Trap House story. You're going to get it. I promise. We will not go this entire month without you getting it. You will get the rest of that story. So I will make sure I deliver on that promise. Trust me, I am not going to forget. Okay. I told you you wouldn't go another long period without a flashback Friday or throwback Thursday pod. So it's coming this month. I promise. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Mr. Ron B. Thank you for the love, OG, triple OG, who writes, do you think the Texans would have settled with 30 women if they didn't get a sense from the league that Watson receives no less than 6 to 10 games? I think the Texans don't want any smoke. And the longer that process, draws itself out, the worse it is for the Texans. The faster they can have resolution, the faster it goes away. So I think the Texans, just by virtue of not wanting to attach themselves to that situation and not wanting to have that situation, be drawn out and have their name negatively attached to the Deshaun Watson situation, they wanted to just make it go away. So they just went ahead and did what they felt like they needed to do to move on from the situation. And those 30 cases that they settled, the charge there was that they were enablers. They knew what he was doing. They turned a blind eye and they allowed him to do what he did. And so they felt like that, they were somewhat culpable. I don't think they're admitting that they were culpable. I just think they're saying to themselves, look, we just want this thing to be done. We want it to be over with. We don't want any parts of this. He's now in Cleveland. Leave us out of this. Here, whatever you need, take this, get that done. Let's move on. We don't want to be associated with that whole situation. So I don't think that's them acknowledging that he's going to be suspended 6 to 10 games. I don't think that has anything to do. I think the two are actually mutually exclusive. I don't think one has anything to do with the other. The Texans are their own entity, and Deshaun Watson is now gone. Again, all of this transpired under their watch when he was a member of the Houston Texans, which is why the connection is made. But now that he's a member of the Cleveland Browns, whatever happens to him, whatever punishment is doled out, has nothing to do with the Houston Texans. And so I think really the Texans, they don't want protests at their games. They don't want people standing outside with signs talking about what a disgusting and despicable organization they are because of what they did and their part in this. So to make that situation less likely to happen, you handle this as fast as possible. As soon as they were hit with these civil suits, they said, all right, we're going to handle these as quickly as possible. Look how long it took Deshaun Watson to start handling those civil cases that he had. Obviously, he needed to make sure that there were going to be no criminal charges pressed against him. And so he had to go through that process first. And once he found out that there weren't going to be any criminal charges that were going to stick, then he started to take care of some of these civil cases, but it's still being drawn out. There's still some on the table that haven't been settled. And so it's still a process that's playing itself out. Whereas the Texans said, look, we don't want the smoke. Okay. We don't want any issues. We're trying to wipe our hands clean of this situation, and we want to start anew without Deshaun Watson, without the distraction of Deshaun Watson. So in order to have that happen, we need to tie up all loose ends, and then we'll be able to move forward. So I don't think them stepping up and knocking down these 30 civil suits and settling has any bearing nor impact nor implications on Deshaun Watson and his state and status within the league and what will actually happen to him. So I don't think he's going to get anywhere near 10 games. 6, I think, is definitely within reason. You know, I think 4 is actually the number. That's my magic number. I think he's going to ultimately get 4 games. So, all right, let's get to any hashtags that may be out there. See if we can't knock a couple of those down before we move on to our final segment of the show. So Gregory Lightbody writes, thoughts on people predicting Washington 7-10 again. I mean, everybody's got their opinion. We already know Adam Rank has us going 3-14. Look, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. Even the people that think we're going to be good, I don't care. Okay. I tell you guys this all the time. You know, everyone's got something to say. That's the point of being a talking head. If you don't have an opinion, what are you doing with the mic? Why are you on my television set? So everybody's going to have an opinion. I don't care what any of them are. All I care about is what you think as fans of this team, you know, and then what the players and the coaches think. That's all I care about. I told you, all we got is us. All we need is us. As Ron Rivera likes to say, all we need is in this room. Okay. All we need is right here within this fan base. So whether it's Robert Turbin, you know, sitting on a studio in a set for ESPN predicting that Washington is going to win the division and people being excited about that, or it's Adam Rank saying that we're going to be 3-14 and one of the worst teams in football, I don't care. I honestly don't care what anybody thinks. All I care about is what those guys in the locker room think, what those coaches think, and then what we as a fan base feel and think. That's what matters to me. And so anyone predicting anything about Washington that isn't within this circle that I've, you know, created, you know, for my sanctity, I don't care what's outside of my bubble. Okay. I'm locked into my Washington Commanders bubble. Obviously, I'm paying attention to everything outside the bubble. Okay. Don't get it twisted, but I'm insulating my Washington Commanders predictions to just what is inside of my bubble, what's inside of this little bit of space that I've created. I like to keep the aura and energy positive around these parts. So, you know, whether it's positive, somebody's predicting us to win the division. Remember last year you had people talking about us going to the NFC Championship game. I don't care about any of that stuff. Rich Eisen was like, look out for the Washington Commanders, and you know, Mike Greenberg, watch out for Washington. I don't care about any of that stuff. I knew we weren't going to be good last year. So I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is us. Because at the end of the day, all we got is us. So I think I got another super chat. And I do. This one is from Vanguardian TV. Thank you for the super chat, Vanguardian TV. Greatly appreciate you. Vanguardian TV writes, what's good, Lou? What's good with you? Says, can Curtis sideline Samuel? Curtis sideline Samuel be the key to finally making Scott Turner's offense a dynamic juggernaut. I think he's going to be huge in making it an offensive juggernaut. I think what they've effectively done by drafting Jahan Dotson is they've put themselves in a position that whether he's healthy or not this year, we can still function as an offense. We don't have to be one of the worst offenses in football without him, because we still got Jahan Dotson and De'Ami Brown and Cam Sims to fall back on. But with Curtis Samuel, it changes everything. It really does give us another dimension that we can tap into and really put pressure on opposing defenses because of his versatility, of his speed, of his run after catch, and just his ability to make things happen with the football in his hands. He is a huge weapon that we would love to deploy for 17 weeks during the regular season and hopefully many more weeks after the regular season has met its conclusion, but he's got to stay healthy and shed that nickname that you have given him of Sideline Samuel. So hopefully he can do that. And I do think he is one of the keys. I don't think he's the actual key. I think Jahan Dotson may be the actual key that unlocks this offense because of the balance that he provides by giving us another target opposite of Terry that teams have to be equally, maybe not equally as afraid of, but a guy that they have to respect on the opposite side, something that Terry hasn't had since he's gotten into the league back in 2019. So I think Samuel will be the key to making this one of, approaching a top 10 offense or cracking the top 10 offensively this season. I think he is the key to that. But I think the key to us being a formidable offense is probably tied to Jahan Dotson's success as a rookie in his first year in the league. So we will see what happens. But let's see. Go back to hashtag, and we have one right here from Captain Spartan 04. It seems like it's been a while, Cap. Good to hear from you. My guy Captain Spartan 04 writes, don't know what good defense you're talking about for the Steelers. 32nd ranked run defense last year, worst since 1940, and 2 new starters at corner. So your rush defense wasn't great, but that was a defense that kept you in a lot of ball games. You can say what you want about your rush defense last year. I watched a number of games last year that you had no business. You want to know why you made it to the playoffs? It wasn't because of your damn offense. That's for damn sure. I don't know if we were watching the same Pittsburgh Steelers team last year. You might have been disappointed in the run defense and they weren't great against the run. I will grant you that. But this is the Pittsburgh Steelers defense that kept you in ball games, okay, that you had no business winning. You won games 15-14 and 13-10 and all kinds of bullshit last year that you found yourself in because you could play defense. Your offense wasn't great last year. You know that. I don't have to tell you that. The fact that you tied the Detroit Lions in a football game speaks volumes about the fact that your offense was trash last season. But what you did do effectively was you stopped teams from scoring points. You might have given up a ton of yards. Yards are cool. It's a great stat. A lot of people like to get wrapped up in yards and all of this. But how many points are you scoring? And that's one thing that Steelers defensively did is they stopped teams from scoring a bunch of points. Yep, they didn't win a whole bunch of games. They won enough to qualify for postseason football, but they did it because they were able to stop teams from putting up a bunch of points. Now, again, when they played the dynamic football teams offensively, they struggled, like Kansas City. We saw what the Chiefs were able to do to them in the regular season. Okay, and what the Chiefs were able to do to them in the postseason. But those types of contests were few and far between. Look what happened when you played Tennessee. Those are the kinds of contests you had last year. We just held teams down, you suffocated them defensively, and you were able to win football games. Again, if your defense wasn't any good, if the defense was as bad as you said it was, you wouldn't have played bonus football last year because your offense was not hitting on a damn thing last season. Your offense was hard to watch is what it was. But your defense, with TJ Watt and company, gave you a shot week in and week out. So, again, we will agree to disagree on what your defense was a season ago. Let's see. Mr. T Money 1993. It's also been a while since we've chopped it up. Good to hear from you. My guy, Mr. T Money 1993 writes, I think the Bengals ultimately missed the playoffs. They depended on a lot of super close wins, which is a dangerous formula. A win is a win is a win in the National Football League. When you're learning how to win, you do that sometimes, and there were some ass whoopings in there too, where they just straight up beat teams down last year. I could remember them going to Baltimore and shellacking the Ravens last year. I think there were a number of games last year where they, whooped some ass. But yeah, there were a lot of games. The Kansas City Chiefs game where they came back from behind and won. There are a number of games like that where it was they, had to, eke out a victory. Those count too. And what it does is it helps you learn how to win. It's easy when you're blowing teams out and you're winning decisively. What's hard in this league is learning how to win the close games. So to me, you want to build up a callus and learn how to win and have that consistency shine through is winning close games. I think that builds more character than destroying teams, because then when you meet adversity and someone doesn't lay down for you, a team doesn't just go away and they keep fighting, scratching, and clawing, and you get into a close ball game, you may not know how to pull it out. They figured it out. How do you think they beat Tennessee last year? How do you think they beat the Raiders and the Chiefs? Every single one of those games in the postseason were close. You know, the Raiders were heading down the field with a chance to, I think, tie that football game. They denied them inside the red zone and preserved the victory. The Titans had the football with an opportunity to kick a game-winning field goal. Instead, they denied them, forced the turnover, and ultimately kicked the game-winning field goal themselves. You know, and it wasn't a great offensive game. Joe Burrow was sacked 8 times in that game, but they found a way to win. That's what winning close does. It prepares you for those close games. So it can be a dangerous formula. I agree. But it also can be something that ends up adding to the confidence of a young team, which I think it ultimately did for Cincinnati. And now they feel like they should win football games. So we'll see. I could see Cincinnati, you know, falling flat on their face this year, similar to another team in their division the previous year in Cleveland. Cleveland, you know, went on the road, beat Pittsburgh, almost beat Kansas City. We were all expecting all these great things from, you know, Cleveland. Their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, won NFL head coach of the year in his first year in Cleveland. That two-headed monster of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb was devastating. That offensive line was outstanding. You're like, man, they got everything they need. And then Baker Mayfield gets injured, and that offense wasn't the same. The defense was okay, but it wasn't great. And they were a disappointment last year. That could happen in Cincinnati, but I just don't see that. If Burrow is healthy, I don't see them having the type of issues that Cleveland had last year. But anything can happen. They're a young team, and that's why I said what I said when I went over their schedule, that I want to see how they handle success. The mark of a young team that gets it is repeating the success from the year previous and learning how to be a consistent winner. You can catch lightning in a bottle and have one of those out-of-body experience seasons. We see it all the time in the NFL. I always like to reference Carolina in 2015 and Jacksonville, even though Carolina, that was coming for a while. That was a team that won the division in 2013, won the division in 20. I think they won the division in 13 and 14, and then had the 15-1 season in 2015. So that was kind of brewing, but it's still they nothing that they had done the 2 previous years looked like 15-1, even though I think they were 13-3 one year. That 2013 season, I think they were actually 13-3 or 12-4, whatever the case may be. Jacksonville in 2017. We've seen those one-off years. The difference between Jacksonville and this team, and even Carolina, to a lesser degree because they had Cam Newton, but this team has Joe Burrow, and they're a much more complete offense. And that defense showed up last year. That's what I'm more concerned about, is can that defense duplicate what they did last year? I think the offense, they're just good. They have the weapon. They're just good. They stay healthy. Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd is Tyler Boyd. Joe Mixon is Joe Mixon, and Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. That's not going to change. I think what they bolstered the offensive line. They're better up front than they were a season ago when Joe Burrow was absolutely harassed. I think what I'm concerned about is, can the defense give me the kind of encore performance that is going to be needed for them to return to where they were a season ago? That's probably what I'm more so focused on than anything else. But again, we will see. Mr. T Money 1993 says, you keep dissing my Panthers as easy games, but I think Bake beats the Browns. You're assuming that Bake starts versus the Browns in week number 1. Look, Sam Darnold stinks, and he ought to start in Carolina immediately. Not immediately, immediately. But you already had your dodo offensive coordinator. Again, sharp offensive mind, not necessarily the smartest guy upstairs when it comes to just common sense, speaking on the quarterback position, already announcing that Sam Darnold was the starter, and then realizing the error in his ways. And really, that was your head coach, Matt Rule, telling him, look, dude, you're not the head coach. Shut your damn mouth. We haven't crowned Sam Darnold anything. He stunk last year. Don't be telling anybody he's our starting quarterback, because that's not the case yet. So he had to come back and, make an amendment to his statement. But Ben McAdoo is interesting. I'll just say that he's a bit aloof. Anyway, he talked about Sam Darnold and his confidence in Sam Darnold. So this isn't a foregone conclusion that I think Sam Darnold is going to start the first 2-3 weeks of the season before you guys realize, okay, enough of this Sam Darnold foolishness. Let's go to Bake. Honestly, from the jump, because you need to figure out if Baker Mayfield's the right man for the job or not. I think he needs to start right away, but he also needs to be ready. He also needs to have the playbook down pat. You don't want to go into the season with only 60% of the playbook being, accessible because he just got here. So I think Baker gives you the best chance to win, but they may feel like the guy that gives us the best opportunity early on in the season is Sam Darnold, because he's been here and he's been working with, Ben McAdoo, and he's been working with the players all offseason, so he's a little bit more comfortable. It's a competition. Baker's the better man and ultimately should win the job, but we'll see. Your Panthers right now, to me, are an easy victory until they show me otherwise. I was so disappointed in them last year. After what they did the first year under Matt Rule and all those close games, even though you ended up like 5-11 or whatever, it was a lot of close losses. I'm like, man, they're right there. Matt Rule, wherever he goes, he turns programs around. And to see the dysfunction and to see how messy everything was last season, to see just how bad the offense was. And I remember I was a staunch supporter of you bringing on the young dude that you did from LSU, Joe Brady, as your offensive coordinator. And I was like, oh, man, he's going to be a head coach in the league in short order. You'll see. And to hear Teddy Bridgewater talk about how there was no red zone install, there was, no organization to this offense, it was a mess. I'm not buying the Carolina Panthers. You're going to have to show me. I was embarrassed, and I wasn't even a Panthers fan last year at the product they put on the field last season. So until you show me that it's not an easy victory, I'm looking at Carolina, and most teams should around the league, like food. I see the Panthers, I'm preparing to eat good. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to our final segment of the show, and garbage time. So I referenced the 4 guys that were on the franchise tag that had a chance to get long-term deals done before the mid-July deadline, and nothing happened with any of those players. So let's quickly knock the 2 tight ends out, because there was never, ever going to be a deal done with either of the franchise tag tight ends in Dalton Schultz of the Dallas Cowboys or Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. Both of those guys gladly signed their franchise tags, were prepared to play under the tag, and they're going to play under the tag. There was never really any true discussion, I think, for either one of those guys to get a long-term deal. I think both teams want to see more before they extend a long-term deal that player feels is beneficial for him and his future, and he'd be willing to sign. So those 2 players weren't going to get a long-term deal. So that was anticlimactic. The 2 players that were looking for new deals, and I think were actively pursuing a long-term deal, but I don't know if they ever actually got close to signing long-term deals, were safety Jesse Bates III in Cincinnati and offensive tackle Orlando Brown in Kansas City with the Chiefs. Now, let's speak on Orlando Brown. I've already really touched on Jesse Bates III, but we'll quickly clean that up and put a bow on it here in a second. But Orlando Brown is where I want to focus my attention first, because they got close on a deal after being very far apart for much of the offseason. Deadline spur action. I talk about that all the time. So as they approached that deadline, I think the Chiefs really tried to get a deal done, and it just didn't meet the expectations or demands of Orlando Brown and his camp. So a deal did not get done. However, they're going to get a deal done with Orlando Brown. He will not leave next year. They will tag him again. If they can't work out a deal before the start of free agency, they will tag him again, and they will be in this predicament again, and they will get a deal done because they traded too much to get Orlando Brown. Okay. He is too big of a part of their team moving forward. They traded for him. They gave up multiple first-round picks with Baltimore and to let him walk away in free agency and to leave Patrick Mahomes blindside, again, unprotected. They're just not going to do that. So what I surmise is going to happen is that Orlando Brown is going to sign that franchise tag. He's going to show up for camp, whether it's, initially, or if he's going to do what Jesse Bates III does and not show up for camp, but show up before the start of the regular season, because really no player wants to go through training camp if they don't have to. So if, he doesn't have to do training camp in the preseason and all of that, he'll just sit out of that. And then as we get closer, there's a weekend between the regular season and the end of the preseason. So I think that's the week that Jesse Bates III signs his deal, his franchise tag. Same with Orlando Brown. And it will make those guys eligible to play in week one. And I think Orlando Brown, more so than Jesse Bates III, will be back with his respective team. I think the Chiefs aren't going to allow him to walk. Don't know what the books look like for the Chiefs this year, but I assume that the books will be a lot cleaner next year, and they'll be in a much better position. The Tyreek Hill situation put them in a position where they had to react. They had to go out, sign, some receivers, and put themselves in a position to kind of soften the blow there. So don't know if they're in the best of positions this year and they had to replace Tyrann Mathieu. So they had to shell out some dough there to replace him in the secondary with Justin Reed. So I feel like they may not have been in the best of positions to facilitate the deal that he was looking for. Maybe they'll be in a better position next year. I don't know their cap situation this year, and I don't know what it looks like next year. But one thing's for sure, I feel confident in saying Orlando Brown is going to remain a Chief, not just this year, but well into the future. They didn't trade away first-round picks. Generally speaking, when you trade first-round picks for a guy, especially if it's multiple first-rounders, you're not going to allow that guy to leave in free agency. Same thing with the Rams and Jalen Ramsey. Same thing with the Cowboys and Amari Cooper. Bears and Khalil Mack. You're not going to just allow that guy to leave. The guy's getting a new deal, and he's staying with your franchise for the foreseeable future because you traded for him. And if he plays well for your organization, same thing we saw with the Jets trading Leonard Williams to the Giants, and the Giants franchise tagging him twice before finally getting that deal done. You're going to keep that guy because you traded for him, So if he plays well and if he plays well and makes good on the trade, you're going to keep that guy. And I think they feel good about Orlando Brown protecting Patrick Mahomes' blindside. And so don't think he's going anywhere. But I do think Jesse Bates III is interesting. I've already touched on this. But just to reiterate, I do think that ultimately this will be his last year and season in Cincinnati. Now, the Bengals hold all the cards. I feel like I want to say this. I didn't say this earlier, but I do want to say this now. And I meant to say it. Of all the positions in football, I feel like the one that gets shitted on the most is the safety position. It used to be running back, but as we've seen over the last, I think there's been a kind of a changing of the guard there. The last 5 years or so, dating back to probably right around Todd Gurley getting the deal from the Rams, the running back position is being valued again. If you've got a really good running back that is versatile enough to be a 3-down back, can catch it out of the backfield, can pass protect, and of course run the football, you're going to give him what he deserves. We saw Nick Chubb get paid. We saw Joe Mixon get paid. We saw Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. We saw Aaron Jones in Green Bay get paid. Like, running backs are getting their money now. Ezekiel Elliott. We're seeing the running back position. If you're that guy, you're going to get your bread, right? The safety position, however, isn't that position. Guys aren't getting broken off at the safety position. And usually if they are, it's with another club. So look at all the movement we had at the safety position this year. The Saints franchise tagging their safety and then allowing him to walk and him getting a massive deal from the Baltimore Ravens. the Saints having a void because of losing their safety, then going out and getting Marcus May from the Jets, who had to play on the franchise tag from the Jets last offseason before tearing his ACL, and then getting his deal from the New Orleans Saints. Then you look at Tyrann Mathieu, who wanted a new deal to stay in Kansas City. They said no. They took Justin Reed, who played really well for the Texans and should have been, I think, a cornerstone of what they were trying to build defensively. They let him move on. He's now a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. And this goes all the way back to when Landon Collins left the Giants and ended up a member of the Washington football team, then Redskins. We saw Tyrann Mathieu leave the Cardinals, then go to the Texans for a year, and then end up in Kansas City. That was the same offseason as Collins. And remember, we saw the Ravens sign Earl Thomas from the Seahawks that same offseason. So to me, the safety position is the one position in football right now where the players get shitted on. It took them a while to catch up with the rest of the league in terms of their pay. So you didn't feel bad about franchise tagging a guy a year or two in a row because it didn't cost you as much. The tight end position is another position where guys usually don't get broken off there, but we're seeing that change with the Darren Wallers of the world. He's about to get broken off. We saw Travis Kelce and what George Kittle and those guys have done for the tight end position and kind of getting it up to speed with the rest of the league. Darren Waller is going to help in that crusade as well. But I think safety position is one of those positions. I don't think teams value the safety position maybe the way that they should. Those guys always, I shouldn't say always, often have to go elsewhere to get their bread. And I think this is another example of that. We saw what the Broncos had to go through, or what Justin Simmons had to go through with the Broncos to get his bread. He had to be franchise tagged 2 years in a row before he finally got that long-term deal. Jesse Bates III is in a similar predicament. Whether he gets his money with Cincinnati or not remains to be seen. I think, unlike Justin Simmons, who was viewed as one of the best safeties in football, Jesse Bates is a good safety. I don't know if he's viewed as one of the best safeties in football, but he's a really good safety. I think Cincinnati kind of feels that way about him. Like, yo, you're really good, but you're not great. So we don't feel obligated to give you a massive long-term deal. We'd like to keep you, but it needs to be reasonable. And he's like, F, you're reasonable. I need to be broken off. I haven't gotten first-round money. I wasn't a first-round pick. I need my bread. So he's after the bag. I don't think Cincinnati's trying to give him the entire bag. I think he ultimately has to get that from someone else next off season. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me on the show tonight. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys later on in the week. For those of you unaware, I have new content coming your way this week. Come Correct. I've put out the promo for that. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, please, by all means, do that. That should be coming at you guys here in the near future. Same could be said for the Super Friends, NFC East Super Friends stream. That is this Thursday at 8 p.m. Don't miss that. I'll be reminding you guys about that constantly. So a lot of big things coming down the pipeline. As I told you guys, I've been cooking up a lot of crack in the lab for you guys, for your consumption. Hopefully you enjoy these programs and this new content. And I'll be looking forward to your feedback. And then I will move accordingly to how it is received. So with that said, I am going to glide to the side and allow you to get back to whatever it was you were doing before I so rudely interrupted your evening. For those of you out there, you know what it is. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. Until next time, do me one favor on the way out. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also hit that like button. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it definitely helps this channel grow exponentially. Over 130 viewers out there, only 83 likes. We can do so much better. Let's get that number up to 100 on the way out the door. With that said, you guys stay safe, take care, God bless, and good night.